Steam sales happen all the time, but deals this cheap don't stick around. Here are 10 games you can grab right now for basically pocket change. And unlike most budget bin garbage, these are actually worth your time. No filler. Let's start with Control Ultimate Edition.
Control is one of those games I kept putting off for years and then felt profoundly stupid about afterward. You walk into a brutalist government building called the Oldest House looking for your missing brother, and the entire universe immediately goes sideways. The building itself doesn't follow the laws of physics. Floors shift, rooms disappear, and federal employees are just floating in corners mumbling to themselves. The combat is incredible. You get a shape-shifting firearm, but the telekinesis is the real star of the show. Ripping fire extinguishers off walls and hurling them into an enemy's face at 80 miles an hour feels weirdly satisfying. Combine that with a narrative that reads like a 1 a.m. deep dive into a government conspiracy forum, and it's easily the best $4 you can spend on Steam. Sons of the Forest drops you onto a remote island to find a missing billionaire, only for you to immediately realize that was a terrible life choice. The woods are packed with cannibals, alongside things significantly worse than cannibals that you'll encounter whether you want to or not. Instead of slapping down pre-built houses from a generic menu, you are physically chopping down trees and manually stacking logs. It sounds tedious, but it makes your survival base feel oddly earned. Plus, your AI companion Kelvin, who communicates entirely through a notepad because he went deaf in the initial helicopter crash, is easily the most endearing NPC in years. It's brutal, it looks stunning at golden hour, and at $9, it's an absolute steal. Metro Exodus is a post-apocalyptic shooter set in the ruins of Russia, and it does something most modern shooters are terrified of. It slows down. A massive chunk of the game is just you trekking through devastated landscapes, scavenging scrap metal, and manually cleaning your gear. You play as Artyom, escaping the underground Moscow metro system on a stolen train heading east. The journey completely resets the environment every chapter, moving from sun-baked deserts to frozen marshlands. The gunplay is heavy, deliberate, and intentionally gritty. Your weapons will jam mid-fight if you don't keep them clean, and ammo is always tight. It rewards cold patience over twitch reflexes, and for less than the price of a coffee, it's a masterpiece. Yes, Resident Evil Village is the one with the tall vampire lady, but the actual game is a wild multi-genre ride. You're back as Ethan Winters, a man who has had a genuinely miserable few years, trapped in an Eastern European village ruled by 4 distinct lords. The genius here is that each lord controls a completely different zone with its own mechanical identity. You go from a classic gothic castle to a frantic horror factory, followed by a psychological horror house that goes in a direction you won't see coming. The gunplay is noticeably tighter than RE7, and the atmosphere commits entirely to being beautifully unsettling. It's an absolute premium horror experience for $10.
No, let me go!
I'll be honest, I went into this one expecting a generic, corporate cash grab, but the game actually nails the school fantasy perfectly. Walking into Hogwarts for the first time is genuinely impressive. Staircases actively move, portraits bicker, and hidden passages are shoved into every corner. You play as a custom 5th-year student arriving late with a mysterious magical ability. The combat loop is entirely spell-based and surprisingly fluid, letting you juggle and shatter enemies by chaining different status effects together. While the open world outside the castle walls can feel a bit formulaic, the castle itself and Hogsmeade are brilliant. If you've ever wanted to just exist in that world for 30 hours, $9 is an absurdly low barrier to entry. The original Resident Evil 4 essentially invented the modern third-person action genre, so remaking it was incredibly high risk. Capcom absolutely nailed it. They kept the perfect pacing and inventory Tetris, but rebuilt the engine from the ground up. Leon finally moves like an actual human being instead of a tank with legs. The new parry system allows you to deflect incoming chainsaws and axes if your timing is sharp, completely changing how you handle crowds. It takes its campy B-movie roots just serious enough to work, keeping the tone delightfully absurd while delivering some of the tightest combat on PC. For $10, it's a mandatory play.
Ahead! You're kidding.
Monster Hunter World is the kind of game where you can sink 200 hours into the map and still feel like a complete amateur. The loop is elegantly simple. Pick a target, hunt the monster, carve its parts to craft better gear, and repeat. With 14 entirely unique weapon types, the mechanical depth is staggering. You can spend 30 hours mastering the insect glaive just to launch yourself into the air and rain down ridiculous aerial combos like a sci-fi gymnast. The monsters themselves feel like a living, breathing ecosystem. They hunt, sleep, territory war with each other, and react dynamically to your presence. It's a massive, addictive loop for under $8. Shadow of War is carried entirely by the Nemesis system, a feature so good it's a crime other developers haven't stolen it. Enemy orcs actively remember your face. If a generic grunt accidentally kills you, he gets promoted, gets a unique name, and will literally mock your corpse the next time you cross paths. The combat leans heavily into the Batman Arkham style, fluid, counter-heavy, and deeply satisfying. Building your own custom army of mind-controlled orcs to lay siege to massive fortresses creates these weird, highly personalized emergent stories that no other game can replicate. At $5, experiencing this engine is a no-brainer.
Oh, that's a gory one.
The Forest came before Sons of the Forest, and the premise is basically the same. Plane crashes, cannibals, bad time. Except this one had a fraction of the budget, and somehow that roughness works in its favor. You wake up from the crash, a guy covered in red paint takes your kid into the trees, and that's your entire briefing. Go figure it out. What makes it stick is the cannibal behavior. They don't just charge you. They watch from the tree line, stand there for a while, then leave. That's more unsettling than if they just attacked. The caves are where the game really goes somewhere. And I'd say more, but I'd rather you find out yourself. Co-op is in there too. Everything scary becomes funny with a friend, and everything manageable becomes a complete disaster. Both outcomes are fine. Finally, we have A Plague Tale Requiem. If you want a game that actually utilizes modern hardware for something other than a tech demo, this is it. The environments, from coastal French towns to crumbling medieval ruins, have a level of texture and lighting that will make you constantly hit photo mode. You follow Amicia and her brother Hugo as they flee across southern France. The story doesn't treat this like a fun fantasy adventure, it's a heavy, emotional grind that gets darker by the hour. The gameplay perfectly blends tense stealth with absolute rat-based chaos, forcing you to manipulate light sources to keep literal oceans of plague rats from eating you alive. It's the priciest game on this list at $20, but it's easily the most memorable.
While offering unique skills and resources.
That's it for the list. Please like and subscribe for more deals like these. Also, do note that the prices shown on the video might be different when you're watching the video. If there's a game out there that I've missed, do let me know in the comments. Catch you in the next one.